Cam Newton says that he's healthy for the first time since 2016, and the Patriots seem to believe him. So is Cam Newton at just turning 32 years old probably the best value in Dynasty Superflex, Chris?
I don't know if he's the best value at Superflex, but I think it at least stabilizes some of his cratering value that we think that he has, just based off of what the Patriots did during the offseason, where it was, they bring in Mac Jones. They wind up drafting Mac Jones, which, regardless of what you think about Mac Jones, it's like really the Patriots are signaling the fact that they are ready to move on and try and bring in like this new era, like the post Tom Brady era, right? I don't think anybody really figured Cam Newton to be the guy to wind up being there as a part of that franchise, like for years and years until Newton winds up retiring. But regardless of what we think about Mac Jones, the team obviously like Mac Jones, but I still want to see Cam Newton of old. I don't know if we'll really get back to prime Newton, but if this is true, even if he doesn't wind up making it he doesn't make it past this season. So let's say after the 2021 season, the Patriots wind up releasing him and he moves on to another team. If he is truly healthy and he can string together enough games so that we really think it's more of they're turning it over to the rookie versus Cam being completely injured and washed, then at least he can wind up going the Ryan Fitzpatrick route, and then he can bounce around to a few teams, still be worthy of at least a QB2 super flex spot like here and there for the next few seasons. And then you can hang him up when he gets to be, 35, 36, 37, somewhere along those lines. So at least I think that path is a viable option for him, right? Other than like the other path was that he's just completely washed up. He winds up only started maybe 10 games max this season. And then more or less like we have to wind up cutting him from our rosters because he has just zero viability in fantasy football afterwards. But now if he's saying this and we actually wind up seeing it in preseason that he actually can hit a intermediate pass and he is a bit more accurate, then of course I would say that, yeah, he does wind up being more of a value and the risk is obviously mitigated or at least reduced like somewhat than what we'd seen in the past.
Sure. Chris Allen there, Adam Wilde here. This is the Dynasty Newsletter. So here's what brought this up, Chris. He put out his own YouTube video. He was his own media in this case, where Cam Newton came out and said, look, I'm healthy for the first time since 2016. Now, I think he tried to say he was healthy last year, coming off not only the shoulder, but the ankle. And I think it was actually the ankle that hindered him more than anything. It seemed like he was mostly inaccurate in the intermediate and specifically the intermediate exterior routes. And a lot of that seemed like he just couldn't plant correctly. I don't even know that it was the shoulder. I don't even know that it was the throwing motion as much as he couldn't plant his feet. So in a sense, I do believe him. Now, on this show, it's turning into a Patriots show at this point. I've said I believe that the Patriots believe Cam Newton is healthy. And that's all that truly matters here because the Patriots don't bring Cam Newton back along. Remember, they could have got Tyrod. They could have sent something cheap for Teddy. They could have gone a different veteran route if they didn't feel like Cam Newton brought wins to this team. And you are out of your mind if you think that Bill Belichick is going to watch what he saw transpire with the glorious Patriots organization last year and go into this year with a quarterback he's not comfortable with. Now, is that Mac Jones? I don't know. I asked before the show, how many starts does Mac Jones get this year? You said 6 because their bye week's week 14. I could see that. And like I said, if they're fringe 500 going into the bye week 14, late bye, sure. I could see maybe going that route. But yeah. I think Mac Jones either plays a lot of games or he plays no games. And I don't know that that's terrible for the Patriots organization. That's why we don't see Mac Jones going in best balls. That's why we see him going at the end of the first because nobody's certain we're going to see any Mac Jones this season. So if I'm the Patriots and I just paid Cam Newton technically a raise from last year when we paid him, I'm expecting to get a season out of him and I'm expecting to let Mac Jones develop.
And I think that would be the way that Bill Belichick and the rest of the Patriots front office would want to approach this season. Not to take anything away from Mac Jones, I do think that he was at least ready to start this season. Now, whether or not the Patriots will wind up winning a bunch of games with him, so on and so forth, that's TBD. But I do think compared to the rest of his quarterback class, he was one of those guys that if he was pressed into the starting role, like say if the 49ers had actually gone out and taken Mac Jones at 3, like he'd been rumored to do for months and months prior to, then okay, fine. I would have no issues with that. I would have preferred Trey Lance, which wound up happening anyway. But regardless, it all really just does come down to whether or not Cam Newton is as healthy as he says he is.
Right.
And really, I like to do like one of these like what if like type scenarios to see like how seasons might have gone and how our perception of the players like would have developed, or I mean, his stock would have risen or fallen depending on whether we would have seen more of them. Like take for instance, what was it, that Sunday night game, like when the Patriots wound up playing Seattle? What if Cam Newton would have converted that touchdown at the very end of the game? They would have wound up, and it would have wound up winning. And then also on top of that, like he wouldn't have gotten COVID like in week 4. Like, what if we'd actually seen essentially a full season of Cam Newton with the Patriots? What would we have thought of him then? Because at the first part of the year, he looked like he was getting back to the Cam Newton of old. I mean, the Patriots, they were top 5, top 6 in terms of EPA per play. Cam Newton himself, he wasn't like the most accurate quarterback. He was still like back end the league in terms of completion percentage over expected, but at least the offense was productive. Like the Patriots offense as a whole was productive, despite really not having, any of the weapons that we now see around either Cam Newton or Mac Jones, like this upcoming season. So it's like, if we had been able to see all of that and we wouldn't have the COVID fog to try and take into account and all the rest of this stuff that surrounded the Patriots offense and Cam Newton specifically over like the last half of the year, then what would we think about him? I still think that we would at least thought that, okay, hey, there might be something here. But now we have to take into account another couple of things on the litany of items that have now become a part of Cam Newton's medical history. And so that's where at least I think it's fair to put him towards the back end of SuperFlex drafts and like things of that nature. But again, going back to the value portion, if he is healthy, like that risk of wind up losing a possible starter like on your roster, now at least that's potentially mitigated. You can actually have him on your roster and not think, well, I have to figure out what to do with them. Or I know if some folks like might have him on their rosters right now, they might be looking for that clip of a few games where he's looking good, then try and put him on the trade block and they package him in a deal at some point during the middle of the season. Like I know what you guys are thinking, but if he can actually string together like 10, 12, or even like a full 16, 17 game season, now there's a path to him being on a starting roster. If maybe not the Patriots starting roster, somebody else's starting roster in 2022, maybe even 2023. So now you're looking at a viable, useful dynasty asset where most folks were either they've already cut bait or looking for an exit strategy sometime during the 2021 season. And we might not have to do that.
And the show headline is going to be, is he the biggest value in Dynasty Superflex? You get to be the biggest value in Dynasty Superflex if you are a 32-year-old elite quarterback. Has he been elite? No, absolutely not. But I'm not going to sit here and call Cam a liar. Maybe he's lying. But if he isn't lying, 2016 Cam would be going for a heck of a lot more value than 2021 Cam is going to go. Right. So at that rate, you're basically saying, do I believe Cam Newton or do I not? People are going to prop themselves up, of course, but also remember, he has something to lose by coming out and saying this too. Look what happened to Robert Griffin III when he did his entire comeback tour. He played terribly and was never the same. I don't know that his career plays out the way it did. I'm someone from Washington, so I saw all of this unfolding in front of me. I don't know that Robert Griffin III's career plays out the way he did if he doesn't put that pressure on himself to get back for that comeback tour that he did. And so when Cam Newton's going to put this pressure on himself to say, I'm healthy for the first time since 2016. Okay, Cam, we know what 2016 Cam looked like. So now we need to see 2016 Cam if that's what you're going to say to us. So at 32 years old, I mean, same age as what, like Kirk Cousins and guys like that are going way ahead of him. Do I want Kirk Cousins for the rest of his career, who's also going to be getting a new contract next year? Or do I want Cam Newton for pennies on the dollar, who has at least the rushing upside? And we saw the usage last year, which I would say is semi-questionable. We don't know if we're going to give all that rushing usage to him going forward without the COVID, without the injured shoulder, the injured ankle. I don't know if that's Cam going forward. Usually you see the guys step back in the rushing game, right? But we saw Cam Newton play goal line running back last year. So I don't know how much to give to that past season. All I know is that if he's going to say he's healthy now, Dynasty owners have a decision to make now. This is the same thing I said about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry got his new contract. You have a decision to make. I go buy Derrick Henry for cheaper than the production I'm going to get the next 3 years, and I don't get to sell him. Now Cam Newton comes out and he says, I'm healthy for the first time since 2016. Patriots paid him more money than they paid him last year. Patriots surrounded him with 2 quality tight ends. Nelson Aguilar, for what he's worth. Kendrick Bourne, for what he's worth. But Jakobi Meyers was already a productive receiver for him. What now? You have a decision to make. Do I go out and I pay for Cam Newton? And if you do pay for Cam Newton, you need him to finish this season, and he's got to earn himself a starting job next year. But what I'm saying is if he plays 16 games or 17, and he gets them into the playoffs, he gets that starting job next year.
Just a starting job.
Exactly.
And that's really what we're looking for. And that's really where the term, where he becomes a value play. Can he be the most valuable, or have the highest value in some of your drafts? And that's where that potential exists, where beforehand, weeks beforehand, that was not a viable outcome. So now it's at least something we can consider moving forward. Yeah.
In fact, in best ball, I was drafting as if Mac Jones was going to be the starter. I was not drafting Mac Jones, but I was drafting Nelson Aguilar late. I was drafting the tight ends late. I was drafting James White late. I don't know that I'm drafting those guys if, in fact, I'm convinced that Cam Newton's going to be the starter this year. Damian Harris even, I believe, is going to have to take a step back if Cam Newton is going to play 17 games. So if you're tuning into the Dynasty newsletter, you're probably wondering where we're getting these tidbits from. Well, we operate directly in correlation with the Football Guys email list. So go over to footballguys.com, sign up for the Football Guys email list that comes from Joe Bryant straight to your email. It gets worked on by Sigmund Bloom, Cecil Lammy. They all have parts of putting it together, that email list, to get all the tidbits that you need directly to your inbox. And then what we do here on the Dynasty newsletter is we pull those tidbits out that are relevant to your Dynasty squads, and we just try to hash those out and say, is this noise? And even if it is noise, what can you do about it? Because your league mates might not know it's noise. You might be sitting here saying, I don't buy Cam Newton being healthy. He's just blowing smoke. Okay, well, maybe you go ahead and you sell your Cam Newton share. That's the type of things that you can utilize by being informed using the Dynasty newsletter. So, Chris, we're not done talking about the Patriots, my friend. I'd imagine people are sick of us talking about the Patriots, but hey, there's nothing we could do. We don't make the notes, and this team is in turmoil, apparently. So, N'Keal Harry and his agent formally requests a trade. This comes from Garofalo from NFL Network. And Chad Parsons and I just talked about N'Keal Harry last week, how sad the story is that you weren't here, so I'll let you know. I went to acquire N'Keal Harry in all my leagues. I went to MFL. I typed in N'Keal Harry to see who had him, and I had him in 11 of 12.
Oof.
So I'm not going to do any N'Keal Harry acquiring, but are you acquiring N'Keal Harry with the thought that he might be ending up on a new roster?
No, not doing it. I can't do it.
Really?
No.
For no price.
No. Take it back. No, I'm not doing it. I thought about it for a second, and I'm not doing it. No. Well, think about it. If this was a prospect that, for the most part, we had at least some concerns about his production profile. Not really about his athletic profile overall, but at least his production
It's more
profile.
his separation. He was producing. He was winning in ways that don't happen in the NFL.
Yeah, and there were question marks about how his skills could translate to the NFL.
Right.
He goes to the Patriots. He gets the draft capital that, of course, everybody from a dynasty perspective we would want for a wide receiver. And then you think about the way that the Patriots play. Could he wind up being just either playing on the perimeter, or if they wind up moving him to a big slot type of role, could he be that dude? So there was that path. None of that happened. I mean, the separation, the inability to separate, like really got the best of him. And now we just see guys, there were just a constant slew of wide receivers that came through the Patriots that have now, I mean, completely outshined him. It was if it wasn't Nelson Aguilar, who most folks like, who now we're pretty sure is going to wind up like passing him, but like Jakobi Meyers, undrafted, completely passed him by. We'll talk about later. I mean, Julian Edelman, like in like his like age 33 season,
oh my goodness, yep,
absolutely running circles around him. I mean, there's just so many pass catchers that have been a part of the Patriots organization that in that short window of how long he's been in the NFL, he has not been able to produce. And I don't care what you say, like regardless of the quarterback play, it doesn't matter. You would think that at some point Harry's skills would at least be able to earn him more targets, or he'd be able to create production on his own. And that has clearly not been the case. So I don't care what situation he goes to. There would really have to be a number of injuries, or he goes to just a completely separate program where he just walks into a wide receiver one role on a pass happy team in order for me to really want to invest in him again. But I don't see that opening anytime soon. Who's he supposed to replace? So in next season, like maybe if Mike Williams goes down, he goes to the Chargers and plays the outside role there for Mike Williams, but he's not as good as Mike Williams, so I don't care. So he winds up down, like at best I can see him winding up with the Texans somehow. And that's pretty much like where he's going to wind up playing. But it's like there's no situation where we could see him landing on a team and all of a sudden everybody gets excited for him. I just cannot think of one off the top of my head where I would just be like, oh, yeah, I really wish I would have would have acquired more of N'Keal Harry like prior to this move. He goes to Minnesota because they could probably use another wide receiver too, like here shortly. So it's like nobody really shows up, or at least in my mind, as a route for Harry to wind up gaining dynasty value. It's just not a situation I want to invest in.
If you're watching the show here on YouTube, you can tell I'm pretty battered and bruised on the subject. But Chris, if you listen back to last week, Chad Parsons hit on what would need to happen for N'Keal Harry to basically reach even threshold for his draft position. And essentially, I believe Chad said he has something like a 1% chance left of hitting in year 3. And that requires him to be a top 24 wide receiver this year. So basically he has whatever percent chance it is that he can be a top 24 wide receiver this year. Right. And if you want to be like me and you have him on every roster and you want him to succeed, you probably need him to be on another team. I would venture to say that 1% chance moves up to like a 1.6% chance. If he does in fact move on, maybe somewhere like the Falcons, maybe, but then you have Laquan Treadwell did not work out in the same situation moving to the Falcons. So if anything, his chances probably increase ever so slightly if he were to move to another team, because the Patriots were, you might have the numbers in front of you, they were probably bottom 5 in neutral passing rate, I'd imagine. So
30th, if I'm remembering correctly, and 31st in red zone passing rate.
Right. So if his percent chance with them was 1%, that means there's 29 better rosters out there he could be on to improve his chances of hitting in year 3.
Well, I mean, we'll think about how long do we wait for Corey Davis to hit? He winds up hitting last year, and his draft stock has increased like not an iota. Devontae Parker, he
also went to the Jets. Like, I think if Corey Davis went to a more viable offensive attack, he's going to be more expensive. I think it just canceled each other out.
I still think it's a viable offense. I do agree, though, that because it just has the stink of the Jets stuck on it.
Right.
It's not the Adam Gase Jets. It's the Saleh, 49ers flavor Jets, like moving forward with a much better quarterback on offensive line. So it's like, but Devontae Parker, he wound up hitting a couple seasons ago. And then it's it's like, we really do need to see like more production from some of those guys that we invested so much draft capital in.
Right.
And if it takes that long in order for them to really show like their skills, it's really going to take like a lot in order, like more than just one season, more than just a string of games in order for them to get back into our good graces. And like you mentioned, I mean, the path for Harry in order to do that, he would really need to go to in Atlanta.
It would have to be like Atlanta.
or like Arizona to replace
Sure.
like AJ Green, like after he hangs him up, like assuming like he only makes it like another season. I mean, those are the situations that would have to happen. But one, he has to go there, and two, he has to produce. So it's like we're really needing like all of those things to happen, like in order for us to even start to buy back into them. And with that being a slim chance for that to happen, it's difficult for me to try and buy into that situation right now.
And they did say that the Patriots organization is working with him. So it sounds like a trade could actually get done if that is the case. And who needs a wide receiver more than Atlanta right now? I mean, I understand they have Kyle Pitts, but I'm really, really sorry to break it to our listeners. Kyle Pitts is not a wide receiver. You can tweet it as many times as you want. You can tweet it all caps. You can tweet it with all caps and exclamation points, but he still will not be a wide receiver. He is going to be a rookie tight end. So, and if the Falcons, as were rumored to get N'Keal Harry, actually acquire N'Keal Harry, as I'm saying, it's not like he's going to skyrocket to the moon, but that 1% that Chad discussed has to increase. So if N'Keal Harry moves out of the way, which, full disclosure, he's already out of the way of Jakobi Meyers, RIP, then we get this blurb from Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston, where he says that he would put his cash on Jakobi Meyers being the most reliable and productive Patriots wideout in 2021. Chris, that's a surprise to me, man, because he is getting paid the least by a wide margin. What do you think about Jakobi Meyers?
I don't know. I don't put too much stock into the whole like contract situation because I get it. I'm trying to remember like which show I was on, or not show I was on, but show I was listening to when I heard somebody mention that actually the Patriots, they do this like in almost in cycles where they'll try and like work through like a number of comp picks, and then maybe like the next season after that they'll splurge on a bunch of cash, wait for those comp picks to build back up again, and then it's just like kind of one of those cycles that they do. And so this year it just happened to work out that they had a bunch of cash that they needed to offload. They wind up bringing in like Aguilar, Bourne, all the rest of those guys, and then that's really like why there's such a lopsided sentiment when you look at the contracts for the wide receivers. Regardless, I try and look at things more from a talent and production standpoint than the contract, because I mean, you can agree with this too. I mean, common sense would dictate that once they get on the field, ain't nobody caring like who got paid like what on the field.
Sure.
Not like Cam Newton is going to look at the dude and just be like, oh, you got paid like how much? You got paid $5 million. Oh, you just got paid like 600,000. All right, so I'm going to throw the dude like we're $5 million. Like that doesn't matter. Like it's more about talent. It's more about archetypes. More about production. So at least for things that are predictive of that, while Nelson Aguilar was great last season, like with Derek Carr, not taking anything away from him, Jakobi Meyers was equally, if not more impressive, at least from a numerical standpoint. So one of the stats that Pro Football Focus uses, like yards per route run, in order to measure like what like the targets and like the amount of yards that a receiver was running, like when they wound up getting targeted. Jakobi Meyers was 17th in the entire league in yards per route run like last season, which is also predictive of future production as well. So
Fair.
That's actually higher than Nelson Aguilar. I mean, it was actually higher than DJ Moore's last year, but we're going to keep that like,
let's keep that one secret.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. But regardless, it is, I mean, but Meyers is like, he is capable of being at least a viable, like wide receiver, like at the very least a wide receiver too, since we know just based off of the context of his situation, he's not going to get a ton of volume. So like, while everybody was so quick to crown Aguilar like the wide receiver one in an offense that's not going to pass a lot, I wouldn't be too quick to do so, or at least say that Meyers is just completely going to fade away from that offense. I know like once he started to come on, like what was it, after weeks like 8 or 9 or something like that,
he had
where
like
he was
a 16
seeing,
reception game or something like
16
that.
reception games. He was getting 6 and 10 targets a game, but then he would have those lows where he only had like 3-4 targets in a game. And that was primarily predicated on how Cam Newton was operating as a quarterback. So I'm not really going to, I guess, knock him or at least double count against like Meyers' production last year. It was opportunity, but at least seeing that he was capable of earning and capitalizing on just a large target share within those weeks. It's too I guess we're too quick to write off that much workload. We're too quick to write off that much talent. And from a numerical standpoint, he can do it. I don't care if he's undrafted at this point. The Patriots could just as summarily wind up giving him either some sort of signing bonus, reworking his contract, or whatever at some point during the next year or so to retain him, which for all intents and purposes, they could just as easily do that. So I'm more apt to side with the folks that are saying, like, yeah, this Meyers kid could actually be something with an offense because we've already seen him do it. And I don't care if Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar, all great players, like in their own right, but Meyers isn't one to just completely let to just fade into that offense, regardless of how much we think they're going to run the ball.
Yeah, I know touchdowns can be fluky, but I'm pretty sure Meyers holds the record for most receptions without a touchdown or something like that. So I don't know that you overcome that if Cam Newton's the starter in 2021. So we're doing a lot of 2021 talk here to kind of parse through what is going to be, dynasty players for the next few years, and Aguilar, Jonnu, Henry, etc. So with so much 2021 talk, you might as well go over to FFPC and join the FBG Player Championship. That is Footballguys Player Championship. Throw your hat in the ring, $350 for some massive cash prizes. Hey, we're doing so much talking about 2021. Why don't you go over to FFPC, put your $350 in, draft Jakobi Meyers late if you agree with Chris, draft N'Keal Harry, and stack him with Matt Ryan if you agree with me. And either lose money with Chris's idea or win money with mine. It's really that simple. Head over to FFPC, look for FBG Championship, put your $350 in, and win some big money. Somebody that might not be winning such big money is Chase Edmonds this year. I don't know if I'm sold so much on Chase Edmonds being the workhorse, but according to Adam Beasley of Pro Football Network, Chase Edmonds is the favorite to be the team's feature back. Feature back, Chris, I'm not sure are you taking the first snap? Okay, sure. I will say that Chase Edmonds is probably going to take most of the first snaps. Does that mean that Chase Edmonds is involved in the goal line? I think Chase Edmonds was second worst in the league in touches inside the 5, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't believe that's going to change much. For one, Kyler already the threat in the red zone. 2, James Conner, much bigger. In fact, much bigger than average, let alone much bigger than Chase Edmonds. So I don't think that Chase Edmonds' game is predicated on being the feature back. And in fact, I think he's more productive when he's not the feature back. So what do you think about Chase Edmonds going forward?
I can't do it. No, I'm not doing that either. I mean, the same response to buying into N'Keal Harry, at least from a dynasty perspective, I'm not buying into Chase Edmonds either. Regardless of the opportunity, what was it? The stat that I've seen a number of folks like tweeting out that he's only had one carry inside the 5, like in the past couple of seasons or something along those lines. Sure, but do we really see that opportunity share growing? Is the question. As a dynasty manager, if you see that opportunity share growing, so on top of him getting more carries inside the 20, which he should be slated to do, is he also going to increase his role within in the passing game? And now is he also going to get more carries inside the red zone? Like, if you can't say yes with any sort of uncertainty to either of those two questions, then what are we doing here? Like,
Sure.
why would you want to invest in either of that? And at least from all the moves that the team has made during the offseason, we can't say yes to either of those two things. I mean, they wind up, regardless of what you think about James Conner, he at least profiles as the type of back that you'd want to use inside the red zone.
Right.
Like you mentioned, they still have Kyler Murray. They were 28th in red zone passing last year, and it was Kyler Murray that was taking the most opportunity in those high leverage situations. So between Kyler Murray and James Conner, I don't see how his opportunity grows, how Edmonds' opportunity grows in the red zone. From a passing perspective, they wind up drafting Rondale Moore. They bring in AJ Green. They're talking about bringing Christian Kirk back into the slot. So how does Chase Edmonds' role in the passing game increase? I'm not seeing how that increases either. So if he's not developing into a 3-down back, or the team isn't really signaling that they're going to give him that sort of opportunity, why should we continue to invest in a guy like that? I know everybody wants to
Mhm.
I mean, it's
It's
almost
the
like
sharp play, right?
it's
Acquiring him is the sharp play. I don't think
sure.
so.
But it's like it's the same. He's the type of back that we were all enthusiastic about, like over the last like 5 or 6 years. And Duke Johnson, it's like it was the exact
Mm.
same thing. It's like just give him more touches. I mean, give him more work, and then we're going to wind up having one of the best backs like in the league. Like, we're just all going to invest in this dude. But just like the NFL does not want to invest in those types of guys. We just watched it happen with Duke Johnson. We're seeing it happen again with Chase Edmonds. We're trying to crown the guy, but the team is already telling us that he's not the guy. He's not going to be the guy that they're going to wind up using in the red zone. He's not going to be the guy that's going to be, rocking a 8-9% target share. That's just not how the Cardinals have signaled they're going to use him. So why should we try and crown him as that type of back? It's just the archetype doesn't match the opportunity profile that we want to prop him up as. So the value shouldn't be there for him. So I can't invest in him at all.
Listen, I've got to stop before all that, because what has Kenyon Drake even ever done in his career for me to even feel as though James Conner was a downgrade? Why is that the assumption going into the season? This is the part that, like, we could get into the fact that they're 28th in red zone rushing rate, and that adding AJ Green doesn't mean you pass less in the red zone. I'm going to tell you that now. And then you added Rondell Moore, who is going to take a lot of the creative touches that you would have liked Edmonds to get, which is what he's actually good at. And then you have Christian Kirk coming back for the intermediate routes because he hasn't been succeeding outside. So you have this huge snowball effect of things that don't add up to Chase Edmonds' ADP, but then you have the team coming out and saying, oh, he's the lead back. Okay, he can have the first touch of the game or whatever.
He can start. I mean, he could be the starter, and he could be the one that winds up getting 10 to 15 touches per game. But are they the touches from a fantasy perspective that we want? I mean, are any of those touches really going to be like what during hurry up or during like in the red zone? I can't see that path for him to be used in that way. Unless, of course, James Conner gets hurt, which is possible. Kyler Murray runs less in the red zone, which is possible. They want to actually try and shield him from that, and he doesn't wind up hurting his shoulder like he did last season. There's possibilities, but those are the things that are in the 5 to 10% like probability range. I mean, it's really, but not as much as the team's just trying to tell us that, yeah, we're not trying to use Chase Edmonds as a full-blown like workhorse type back. That's just not what they're signaling to us.
And I tell you what, if you don't want to invest in Chase Edmonds and you're hearing what we're saying, just go acquire Kenyon Drake if you're looking for somebody to do what Chase Edmonds is going to do in 2021. I mean, if you just need a receiving back on a offense prone to pass, Kenyon Drake's your guy for half the cost to acquire. And it's odd that Kenyon Drake was the running mate that just left, but Kenyon Drake in the Arizona offense was being utilized so much different than he's going to be utilized in the Las Vegas offense. And in fact, last year they thought Kenyon Drake was James Conner, and Kenyon Drake is not that running back. So it's just this weird shift where Kenyon Drake gets to go to Las Vegas, play behind Josh Jacobs, who is more of a James Conner type back. And Kenyon Drake gets to play Kenyon Drake ball. And then now James Conner gets to move into Arizona. And we expect Chase Edmonds to play like, Josh Jacobs ball. No.
Right.
This stuff just isn't adding up for this to make sense. Now, if Edmonds kept his ADP from last year, now we're talking. Because if you want to give me 3 or 4 extra targets from an electric player like Chase Edmonds, I'm all for it. But when the ADP gets up to a player that is going to get 15, 16, 17 touches, red zone carries, and targets, you can't pay for that. Right.
I think if you're rostering Edmonds at this point, I think it's a clear sign for you to at least entertain options to move him at this point. But at the same time, I guess the question I have for you is, are you buying James Conner at this point? Is he a guy that you're trying to acquire? Or are you just going to let it sit and just say, I don't want to touch the backfield at all from a dynasty perspective?
No, I do want to acquire him. I'm always looking at the contracts because I do think in the background the NFL is worried about their money and where their money's at. And they're worried about making sure that their fans are seeing that the money's well spent. Their fans are like their taxpayers, and they want to make sure that their money went to good investments. James Conner did not get a lot of money
Right.
That worries me a bit because if Kenyon Drake is going to go get $10 million, now the only thing that's weird about that is that was Las Vegas. They'll give them more money, right?
Yeah.
But Gus Edwards got the same contract as Kenyon Drake. And I personally view James Conner as a much more productive, much more well-rounded back than Gus Edwards. Both bigger backs, both good vision, but I felt like James Conner brought more. So I don't really understand the contract, and I almost feel like that's signaling. So I feel like I'm falling into a trap because I do want to acquire James Conner, but I don't understand how Gus Edwards is getting 2 years, $10 million. Kenyon Drake is getting 2 years, $10 million. And James Conner, I think, got $1.2 million on a 1 year.
Yeah, something along those lines. I mean, it could
had
be
to have been the injury, I think.
Yeah, that might have been like a more or less a prove it like type deal where the team already like understood like the not just the injury history but also his health his health due to what is it that he has, not cancer.
No, he did have cancer.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, it's possible that was kind of like wrapped into his contract, and if he winds up being able to make it through the entire season, maybe they do bring him back on a longer term deal or something like that. Or regardless, if he winds up stringing almost the same way that we were talking about like Cam Newton earlier, if he strings together enough games, maybe Arizona doesn't keep him, but at least it signals to the rest of the league that he is viable for a contract elsewhere. So let's say if Miami wants to, Malcolm Brown ain't long for the league anyway. They're not getting much out of was it Dokes? And like Salvin Ahmed. I mean, and they just want another bruiser to work behind like Myles Gaskin. They wind up bringing in James Conner. What if, let's see, Justin Jackson, Joshua Kelly, and even the new guy that they brought in, Larry Roundtree, like they don't work out. They want a bruiser to work behind Austin Eckler. Boom, James Conner. So it's like that archetype of running back, assuming they don't have a ton of miles like on their body, like that type of archetype, I can wind up seeing them getting a 1 year deal here, a 2 year deal there, like something along those lines. Basically, yeah, that's exactly it.
Carlos Hyde, because he's going to be he's going to be up for contract in his 25-year-old season.
Yeah.
So that's right on the fringe of actually getting viable money. And if he keeps taking 1 year, he's going to get a few million here, a few million there, or he's going to go the Melvin Gordon route and get a second big payday and kind of fizzle out. I don't know which one that I would prefer, but something has to be strange, or James Conner has a terrible agent if these other backs that I've viewed as less talented, because James Conner's the size of a bruiser, but we saw when he took over the plug-and-play Le'Veon Bell role, he excelled in it. So it's not that he has to be a bruiser. He's the size of a bruiser. But you never know if that's actually his ceiling. I don't even know that he's going to be utilized that way this season, because another thing that we didn't mention is that if James Conner plays to his potential, to what we saw when he was the plug-and-play Le'Veon Bell, it's going to be tough for Edmonds to keep getting that popularity, that work. There's no reason the team needs to stick to Edmonds. If James Conner just blows him out of the water, which I do think is in the range of outcomes, then you might not see. I mean, that's a crater for Edmonds, and his value right now is peaking, similar to what we saw. I always bring up Jerick McKinnon and Tevin Coleman are the two that have meteoric rises. Yeah. If your running back has a meteoric rise without a lot of production, you're probably better off just moving off that value for somebody else.
Like we should have done with Kenyon Drake, like beforehand.
Very good point. Yes.
Yeah.
So another player that suffered from injury last season that might be affecting their value slightly in 2021 is Amari Cooper. He's cutting it close to training camp. Does that worry you at all?
Not really. I would say that if we're into training camp, like right now on like July 12th, on July 12th, I'm not worried. If you ask me this, like we'll see in 2 weeks or whatever, like when we do the show again, sure. If he's not there, like at camp, and we're not really seeing like much movement in terms of him like being a part of camp like anytime soon, then yes, then I will start to get concerned. But for right now, I'm at least cautiously optimistic that he'll still be there. He'll be a part of that offense. And then by the time, preseason and then the regular season rolls around, everything will be full systems going. He'll be back a part of the offense. No problem.
Yeah, it's something interesting to consider if you want to dig into a few deeper layers. It's the initial reaction is usually it's Dynasty. Why do I care that he had ankle surgery this offseason and might, even if he missed a game or two, what's it matter? He just got a huge contract and he's still a young receiver. But we see this often in Dynasty when the new pretty face comes into the offense. Just without Amari Cooper doing anything, CeeDee Lamb's ADP rising brings Amari Cooper's ADP down. Jamar Chase's ADP rising is going to bring T. Higgins' ADP down and Tyler Boyd, without either of those players even doing anything to make their ADP fall. That's just the changing of guard happens in ADP and the value goes down and down and down. So if Amari Cooper is to miss time, then all we're seeing from camp is CeeDee Lamb this and CeeDee Lamb that and Michael Gallup this and Michael Gallup that, then you're losing value on one of your players without him even doing anything because he's not there to remind you, excuse me, I'm Amari Cooper here. I was the wide receiver 5 while Dak Prescott was healthy. He's not there to tell you that because he's on the sideline because he had ankle surgery in the offseason.
Right. And just think about what is it? They're supposed to be on Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe so.
So think about the type of personality, like who are we going to see getting the most like camera time? Are we going to see Amari Cooper, who has been like the stoic, like the dude plays chess in the locker room?
Yeah, super quiet.
Or are we going to see CD out there? Just jaw jacking with all the rest of the dudes out there on the field, making those highlight reel catches like we always saw him do like throughout his rookie season. We're going to see more of CD. And I know, and for good reason too. We want to see him excel past the slot role that he was like pretty much pigeonholed into last year. And now we're seeing more about him like working on the outside, Michael Gallup moving into the slot. All good things. But as you're mentioning, the more that happens, I almost want to be the guy that's kind of like angling to acquire somebody like Amari Cooper.
Sure.
Because the more we see about both of those guys, the younger guys, the guys with at least similar or higher like draft capital associated with them. Those are the guys that are going to be a part of this prolific offense with Dak Prescott back. People are going to be wanting CD. People are going to be wanting Gallup. Nobody's going to be wanting, at least not as much, of Amari. So that's when that value gets depressed. That's when I want to try and swoop in and like try and throw a trade like here and there.
And all you have to do is sit there and remind yourself that not only did they trade a first for Amari Cooper, but then they paid him. So CD, do what you got to do. Gallup, do what you got to do out there. But I think that Amari is going to be locked in for the lead and targets. And you think that it's a crowded wide receiver room. Gallup can move on next year.
Yep.
So they're retaining CD. They're retaining Amari. Gallup's probably the odd man out. I don't think you have much to worry about if you're Amari Cooper. And you don't have much to worry about if you like your Football Guys content, but you like to watch on your phone because we have the Footballguys Mobile App. So if you want to go over to your app store, you like to spend time on your phone, you love our new website, you like our shows, but you just don't like the desktop look and feel, don't worry. Head over to the app store, look for the FBG Mobile App, and you'll get all the content right there on your phone. Sounds like Kadarius Toney is going to be spending a lot of time on his phone because Kadarius Toney is said to be brought along slowly, according to Dan Duggan of The Athletic. The problem with that, it doesn't seem to mean anything, is that we've talked about Kadarius Toney probably the last 3 or 4 episodes, and they're all negative. So eventually there's a snowball effect, but how do you bring in somebody as fast as Kadarius Toney, somebody who could not only be a productive receiver, but a productive, I hate to use the word gadget because gadget never works out, but he could be a versatile player right off the bat. Now, I believe in Darius Slayton. I think Sterling Shepard's underrated. Kenny Golladay just got buku bucks. So I was only expecting Kadarius Toney to be involved in packages, but I did expect plays to be called for Kadarius Toney. I expected him to get 2 to 3 high-value touches a game where this play is going to Toney. Whether it doesn't work or it works doesn't matter. We drafted him in the first round. You're getting the ball this play. It doesn't even sound like he's going to be taking first-team reps, let alone have plays drawn up for him at this point. Now, you and I were already scared off of him, but how do you feel about him now after we took him what did we have? Amari Rogers, Dwayne Eskridge,
What did we
Amon-Ra
put him
St.
at?
Brown.
208?
I believe it was 208. Yep. That was SuperFlex, but still.
Right. And I'd still think that I keep him there because I still can't see, like, I'm not moving. I think we had him like right before Eskridge, right? Or something like that.
Yes, though. Well, and then eventually in a later show, I moved him ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown too. So
Okay.
we kept Amari Rogers over him, but right now I have it Amari Rogers, Kadarius Toney, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then Dwayne Eskridge.
Okay, yeah. So it's not like any of those, the wide receivers going behind him have really made like this stellar case to be moved ahead of him. So at
Right.
least from a dynasty perspective, not moving him yet. I mean, Eskridge has already been hurt, like when they were during OTAs. Haven't really heard much from Amon-Ra St. Brown, at least.
Which
like,
we said he has to still be good, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
he had all that hype and he had all that opportunity this season, but he still has to be good. And he was only a 4th round pick.
Exactly. So it's like I can't move him down past like where he's currently at. I still think that his value from a positional standpoint is still fair. Now, if he goes out during the season and it really is, I mean, that quote comes to fruition and he's not even out on like being rotated in on 3 wide receiver sets. We're not really seeing those manufactured touches that we know that we would like to see for a guy like him, almost similar to what we wanted for like Visca when like he came out of college. But it's like, we knew going into this that what Laviska Shenault had like coming into the NFL, like with the Jaguars, at least they had a fairly creative play caller last season. But now with Toney working with Jason Garrett, it's like we know that that's not really in the cards like for them. I mean, offensive coordinator aside, it's like the head coach really isn't one for actually utilizing that sort of like play, like creative, like play calling, like within the offense. So I think if anybody wants to move him down in their ranks, I think at this point you're double counting because we already knew that this was going to be in the range of outcomes for him. I mean, if reading through the tea leaves from OTAs, the stories coming out of OTAs all the way up to now, I mean, really nothing's changed from a value perspective. It's just really now we really need to see the production happen for him. If the production does work out and he winds up actually being useful or like earning opportunity within the offense, then okay, fine. Then everything stabilizes. And then now we can actually look forward to him being a larger part of the offense, either throughout the back end of 2021 and then on into 2022. But if it just continues to get worse from there, then again, it's like now we really do need to like wind up like reassessing like what that entire team is going to look like, especially for him moving forward.
And I will part with this. It's our job to give you objective, actionable advice. So it's clear that you and I weren't high on Kadarius Toney at any point in this process. But if you were a fan of Kadarius Toney at any point, then now would be the time to look to acquire him, say something like a 2022 second for Kadarius Toney and a 2022 third or something like that. Because if you liked Kadarius Toney before, to date, none of the blurbs that we've talked to you about have been sticky. So it's missing practice for something personal. It's not signing your contract because you don't believe in the bottom line. It's having to be patient with a rookie wide receiver, which we should know anyways without this blurb. So if you believed in Kadarius Toney before, it's time to go acquire him. If you never believed in Kadarius Toney, don't double count. And that's what we're going to part with today. He's Chris Allen at Chris Allen FFWX. I'm Adam Wilde at APWILDE. And we'll see you next time.
Peace.